Well, welcome. Welcome to this module where we're going back to the web-based ASII. And our agenda this time is that we want to talk about how you go about contrasting a student's performance with narrative passages versus informational passages. We're also going to remind you about some very crucial features of the ASII web-based, designed to be sure that you get comfortable so you don't have any problems that cause frustration. The assumption then is that you have viewed that first web-based ASI voiced presentation where the whole program's introduced. All right, you've gone into thoughtfulliteracy.com, you've inputted a student's performance, and you are ready to look at the recapitulation record. And when you do, this is what you find. And this is what we're going to start emphasizing. All right, two main things happen here. First, you have the data file, and that is the location for where you save your data. We pointed out you right-click and then Save As. Why? You may, in the discussions with a supervisor, a colleague, realize that you didn't score some items in the same way that someone else pointed out something you missed. So you want to go back and make those changes. So that's an important thing. But notice on the bottom where it says Documents, notice that you will have either a narrative or an informational recapitulation record. So you don't put scores for narrative in the rubric at the same time that you're making use of the informational. So how do you do that? This is going to provide some guidance. First, we're going to go in and input one level of information. Then we're going to go back and we're going to upgrade that a record from the same student that had been done and already saved. So let's get to thoughtfulliteracy.com. We're going to check in here. All right. In and start. Log in. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go to ASII web-based, and this is what I see. This student's name is Susie, and Susie is in the 4th grade. She's 10 years old, was tested on 9/20 by her classroom teacher, Mr. Jones. All right, we looked at Susie's performance. He started at the 2nd grade where she had scores of 20. She also had 20 on 3rd grade. Whoops, this one didn't come out. All right. However, her current grade level of 4th grade, she was only correct with 17, although she did respond correctly to 2, but then she dropped all the way down to 14. So since Mr. Jones wants to get some information about the difference between narrative and informational, he started only at the 3rd grade. So I'm going to go down to the bottom right where it says informational passages, and this time 3rd grade 1, the first story was immigrants. All right, this was read orally, so at the top you'll notice I have clicked oral. I come down, there were 3 miscues, 0 violated, there were 3 retellings, and no non-words. So I've inputted the miscue information. All right, now I'm going to, I have my notes here, so I'm going to be dropping my eyes down periodically. And here we have I'm sorry, that's half. There. Have to make sure I have the right ones. All right, so I am finished with third oral. I move now to the second story, and that was how banks work. It was read silently, and then I am going to give you her scores here. The only one is a half on 10. All right. So I'm putting these in, and there's a half. And I realize now I didn't do retelling on the first story on immigrants, so I'll go back and do that in a second. But first, let me do this. All right, here she had all of these. The only category that she omitted was this. And she had a critical response. So I'm going to remind you, I've inputted all the scores. At the bottom it says calculate retelling. I click on, and now I'm directed to her retelling score of 2. All right, quick reminder. If you look at the top, I'm in a sub-menu that says retelling help. I'm going to X out of that, but before I do, I'm going to read under the retelling score where it reminds me that I am the one that have to enter the retelling score on the ASII rubric page for the story. So I'm going to the top, I'm going to click out, remembering the score is 2, folks. So I put in here 2. And now I have to go back to the immigrants because I forgot to do the retelling here, and I am going to show you her scores here. She had all of these, and this was missing, and this, and there. So I've inputted scores. At the bottom I hit calculate reading scores, and again I have a score of 2. Remember, I am going to have to enter that, so I go up to the top, X out of retelling help, and input 2. Now I have inputted for third grade information, both an oral and a silent, so I am ready to view the recapitulation record. So it's taken its little time here to calculate. Remember here, I will save this, and when I do this, I want to point out, I would right click. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'll just tell you what I did. I would right click and say Susie information. All right, because that's how I need to save this. Save as Susie information. All right, when I come here, I'm going to now study Susie's records. And even I could come a little larger for you, because here I see, keeping in mind that the information is different from the narrative in that the information has 4 text and 4 inferences and only 2 critical response. So I want to study that carefully. So I notice we have a 90 here. So I get out of the recapitulation record and I go to the information passages at the bottom right. Click that on. Why? There is where the menu is. So for reading levels. So even I'm going to ignore that it says independent, rather highest. I'm just going to focus on that this third grade is independent for her. So I click third grade is independent, right? And then once more I view the recapitulation record. And this is the advantage of having that available. Because down at the numerical analysis, which is down at the bottom here, this allows you to really compare and contrast and see the difference between a student's oral and silent reading. Although the student is doing very, very well, we have a 95 at silent and we have an 85 with information, rather oral. So I want to start looking here. How am I going to bring that oral up? That will be a goal that I have. All right, so since I've looked at Susie with information, I'm going to now, one more time, go back into the CRI, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and guide you one more time on how to retrieve. So I come to the far right here underneath the help menu and click Data File Upload. Once I have that, I come over to the first box that says Choose a File. So I click Choose a File. And what I'm going to look for is one that says Susie Narrative. So I open that. Why? I saved it. And now I go to the right and I now click on Upload. Now it will tell me, click here to create the ASII web page. And now it's being developed and it tells me here, success. I now have access to that. So it will log you in again. But here we have Susie again. But this time, folks, since I've already inputted the narrative, I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the narrative. I would have printed out already my information, and look at here I have Susie's narrative. I'm going to increase it here, and notice on the narrative for third grade, that was instructional for her. So I print out my narrative and I print out my information, and I see Susie tends to respond more positively to informational text. That's powerful information for me to have. But notice, in order to have this information, I need to input it separately, using first the narrative and secondly the information. All right, so our task of contrasting and comparing is finished, and we have final reminders. 1. Subfolders. Folks, there are 3 types of subfolders. One is the retelling help, the other is the recapitulation record, and the third, fluency rubric. They are subfolders, and you must X out. It will automatically return you to the page preceding where you went in to click to the subfolder. But never, never, never X out of the ASII. You will lose your data. And so you don't X out of ASII until you have saved the student's record. Let's come down to the middle. Remember the retelling score. Why? You need to record that score in the rubric, and you use the drop-down menu after you X out of retelling. You input. And finally, don't forget where the reading level is menu. It's located at the top of the full passage menu where you have the full table of contents. And you go there after you have studied and you're ready to identify levels. All right, folks, we're saying a big thank you for being with us, working with the ASII, and becoming better in your ability to assess and plan for instruction for your students. So, we're saying goodbye, but folks, we hope to see you very soon.